Of course, I am Allan, and we are on Wednesday. It is Wednesday today, but we are doing Tuesday's material because, of course, this is a short week, right? But how are you guys doing today? Is anybody here? You can tell me how you are. I'm doing pretty good. Managed to get more sleep last night. Managed to wake up a little bit earlier, so I was able to finally shave. And yeah, I feel a little bit refreshed. So feeling okay this morning. I hope you guys are feeling good too. Yep, looks like you guys are doing good. All right, so we can get started on today's material. But our plan for today is we're going to start with some listening. And then in the second class today, we're actually going to do some reading. And in our final elective class, we're going to be talking about stories. And yeah, that's our plan for today. So our topic for today's listening, though, is this sheet here. So please take a look at this one. And it says, topic, pollution is the world's biggest killer. Oh dear. Well, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? To start with here, it says types of pollution. What causes these types of pollution and how bad are they? How can we reduce these levels? Okay, now I'll have to admit right away that I'm not really an expert when it comes to pollution, but this is a good topic because things like climate change, pollution, recycling, etc., these are big topics these days, right? So these are things that a lot of people talk about, whether that's in your country or in Canada or the United States or wherever, right? So it's good to learn how to talk about pollution and the effects of pollution, right? So the first part we have here, this is good, but we've got this kind of table, and on the left we have air, water, soil, radioactive, noise, and light. So we have different forms of pollution here. We have causes, how bad, and reducing levels. So we have to think about like what causes these forms of pollution, how bad are they for us, and how can we possibly reduce these forms of pollution. So I think a good idea, guys, would be for me to kind of recreate the table on the board, at least try anyhow. So I'm just going to write down and copy some of the stuff here. So first one is air. Second one is water. Oh, that E looks really odd. Okay, then we have soil. Then we have radioactive. After that, we've got noise. And lastly, we have light. Okay, and then at the top here, we have causes. How bad? And lastly, reducing levels. Okay, so let's think about this together. If you guys have any ideas, please just shout them out, write them out in the comment section, and that'll help me because, again, I am no expert when it comes to pollution. But our first one is air. This is kind of the easiest one for me, right? And it says causes. Well, of course, air pollution, I believe it's mostly coming from cars, factories, power plants. And a lot of people don't know this, but agriculture, especially like ranching with cows, causes a lot of pollution. So maybe I'm just going to write in here cows, etc. But I think these are the main ones, especially cars, factories. Power plants, of course, it depends on the kind of power plant. If it's a solar power plant or nuclear power plant, I know that it's not really creating air pollution, but if it is a power plant burning things like oil or coal, then it is. So actually, maybe I should clarify this by writing fossil fuel power plants. Okay, and maybe I should make a divider here. Okay, and give me a second. Again, I'm not the nicest writer, so there we go. Okay, now how bad is air pollution? My opinion is, like, compared to the other ones here, I'd say quite bad. Leads to acid rain. I think also cancer, climate change, etc. So obviously, in my opinion, air pollution is a big deal. It causes a lot of big problems, right? Now, reducing levels, that's kind of the hard part here. But my easy solution here would be switch to green energy. Use less electricity and drive less. I guess another thing I could write here is, like, I don't want to say this, but I think becoming vegan also kind of helps, because if you don't eat beef and pork, that helps to reduce the number of cows and pigs being raised. And pigs and cows actually create a lot of pollution, so that would be helpful as well. But I just don't want to be vegan because I like beef and I like pork, and I don't want to give it up yet. Anyhow, guys, so that's what I got for air. Let's look at water. Water pollution, or pollution in the water. What are the causes? I think the main causes would be, again, factories, garbage, etc. Like people not recycling properly. Garbage gets into the water eventually. How bad is it? Now I'm going to change. I would say it's not as bad as air pollution, but still pretty bad. Damages marine, wildlife, and their habitat. I think the main thing that it does is it damages the marine habitat, like coral reefs and the places under the sea. But also, of course, it hurts marine wildlife. Now, marine wildlife means any kind of wild animals living in the water: fish, dolphins, whales, sharks, etc., etc. Yeah. So I think one of the main ways to reduce that, though, is by recycling. And what else? Consuming less, so factories don't create so much pollution and that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's what I got for water. Let's think about soil. The main causes, again, I think factories has to be the main one here, but factories and agriculture, I believe, are the main ones. And how bad is it? It's hard for me to know. In Canada's case, this is not a significant issue. Canada has a lot of land. We do have pretty good environmental controls, so it's not a big problem here. I believe this is a bigger problem in other countries, but I think this I'm going to say kind of bad. I believe one big problem is it leads to desertification. It leads to the development of deserts and the expansion of deserts, and of course that's not good, right? How can we reduce this problem? That is really tough. But yeah, I'm going to write here, eat less beef and pork, get government And for government, sometimes we write G-O-V apostrophe T for short. And this is a nice shorthand way to write government, because government, maybe you're lazy, you don't want to write the whole word, right? Get government to pass new laws to protect the soil. Okay, that's kind of basic. Okay, next one is radioactive. This one maybe you guys might have some trouble with. You might be thinking, what does that even mean, radioactive? Radioactive material are things that, like plutonium or uranium, or things you would find in a nuclear power plant. If you think of the symbols of radioactivity, they are the symbols like this. Give me a second. Usually there's kind of a ball in the middle, and then there's this kind of symbol around it. Or you have the circle with I think it's got 3 kind of triangles. Okay, yes, I'm really bad at drawing. Radioactive material, of course, is extremely dangerous. Usually can only be found in a nuclear power plant. But if there's a problem with that nuclear power plant, if something is going on and a nuclear power plant has a meltdown or some significant issue, and the radioactive material is able to escape, it can do enormous damage to the environment. The 2 best examples we have right now are most recently Fukushima in Japan, when there was the earthquake and then the ensuing tsunami, and it damaged that nuclear power plant. I think it was called the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Some of the radioactive material did escape, and I believe it went into the ocean, which is really concerning, of course, right? But before that, there was an even bigger problem in the former USSR. I believe it was in a city called Chernobyl in the Ukraine. And the Soviets, who were controlling this nuclear power plant, made a number of mistakes, and then their nuclear power plant had a meltdown, and it was spreading radioactive material all around the world. And actually, even today, you cannot really go to the city of Chernobyl. The entire city had to be evacuated, because if you go there, the levels of radioactivity are so high that you might develop cancer really, really, really quick, right? And so there are these really interesting stories that, like in the forest around Chernobyl, a lot of the wildlife there has kind of mutated. So there are like wolves with 3 eyes, or crows with 5 legs, or something strange like that. So radioactivity is actually really, really scary. However, something we need to keep in mind is that most of the nuclear power plants around the world are very, very safe. And these accidents like Fukushima or Chernobyl are not very common. Like Chernobyl, I think that happened in the late 1980s, 1988 or 1989. And then the problem with Fukushima happened in 2011. So those problems were separated by about 20 plus years. It's not common for these problems to happen, but when they do, it is pretty scary. But the main cause of this meltdown in nuclear power plants is usually human error or natural disasters that damage nuclear power plants. Okay. All right, now how bad is it? If it happens, which is unlikely, I think that's important to point out, it can be very dangerous. Now, how can we reduce levels of this happening? I don't know if we really want to. I think it depends on what we are more concerned about. Like a lot of people these days are concerned about global warming and climate change. I actually think that nuclear power is basically a good thing. It just needs to be done in a very safe way. So in my opinion, I think we should be using more nuclear power, but we need to be just very, very careful, because the good thing about nuclear power is that it doesn't really create pollution. It creates radioactive waste, which needs to be stored in a secure area. But I think if we have a nuclear power plant in a developed country with good laws, I think it's basically okay. And I think it's one of the ways that we can fight global climate change. I think nuclear power is an important part of that problem. So anyhow, reducing levels of it, I just think, how can I say, governments need to create good laws to protect the public. Okie dokie. All right, guys, so let's move on to noise. Noise pollution is totally different from the previous ones we've been talking about. Noise pollution just means when people are like playing loud music. So the main causes of noise pollution are, I don't know, companies playing loud music, or of course young people are the main cause. Young people partying, cars, construction, etc. Right? So my opinion, like, noise pollution is not really a big problem. Now, how can we reduce noise pollution? I don't know. I'm just not very concerned about this, but we should shame young people who are too loud. That's all I can really think of right now. Okay, so noise pollution, not worried about it. It is kind of annoying when I'm like walking outside in the public, like walking around Vancouver, for example, and somebody's playing really loud, obnoxious music in their truck or their car, and it's bothering me and it's bothering other people who are walking around. Yeah, it's annoying, and I would like to say something to that person, but it's just not really a big issue. Last one we have here is light pollution. Light pollution just means like, it doesn't mean like a low level of pollution. It means like too many lights. Now, this is not really a big problem in, I don't know, North America. I think light pollution is a bigger problem in countries like Japan or Korea or China, where like a lot of companies tend to use too many lights to advertise products. It's kind of like annoying. There are too many like flashing lights. It makes the city look modern, but at the same time, it just kind of looks stupid to me. Sorry if you think it looks really cool, but yeah, the main cause of light pollution is just companies, electronic billboards, and signs, etc. Signs in, well, of course, this is mostly in urban areas, like big cities, like Hong Kong, of course, is famous because like a lot of the buildings have these really bright lights on them. But how bad is it? Nah. Again, for me, not really a problem. I've lived in East Asia before. I thought it was kind of annoying, but I don't know. It's not a big issue. How can we reduce levels? Yeah, I'm just going to say N/A. Not applicable. I don't actually know. And actually, to be honest, I don't really care. It's just not a big issue for me. All right, guys, but the main thing, of course, we need to do today is we need to do this actual listening. Then we have a ton of questions to answer here. So let's listen to this twice maybe more than twice. It just depends on how difficult I think it is. I will also be filling this in, so I'll be able to gauge how difficult this is. But of course, we need to listen and try our best to fill in the blanks. We've got 12 blanks here. Let's try it out. Okay, so give me a second. Just need to get this going. Is my mouse working? Okay, is the trackpad working? Did the computer turn off? Okay, it's turning back on. This computer goes to sleep really quickly. I don't know why. Okay, here we go. I hope this is loud enough. If this is not loud enough, please say something and I'll turn up the volume. But here we go.
Now, the VOA Special English program, Words and Their Stories. Today, we explain more proverbs.
What?
A proverb is a short, well-known saying.
Okay, guys, somehow I am on the wrong listening here. How did I get the wrong listening? 1 second. Wait. Sorry guys, give me a moment here. Yeah, this is the right one, isn't it? Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, I don't know how that happened. Okay. Okay. I really gotta check. Is this right? Yeah, Superlative Stories Tuesday. Okay, sorry guys, here we go.
Pollution is the world's biggest killer. This is breakingnewsenglish.com. A new study has found that pollution is now the world's biggest killer. 1 in 6 deaths worldwide is because of pollution. This is 16% of all global deaths. Most of these deaths were from non-infectious diseases caused by pollution. These include heart disease, lung cancer, and stroke. The study was published in the medical journal The Lancet. Researchers said most pollution-related deaths occurred in poorer countries. About 92% of these deaths were in low-income nations, especially countries where there is a lot of economic development, such as India and China. Bangladesh and Somalia were the worst affected countries. Brunei and Sweden had the lowest numbers of pollution-related deaths. Study co-author Karti Sandelia said pollution, poverty, poor health, and social injustice are deeply intertwined. He added, pollution threatens fundamental human rights, such as the right to life, health, well-being, and safe work. He said air pollution was the biggest killer. Air pollution led to 6.5 million premature deaths. The second biggest killer was water pollution, which caused 1.8 million deaths. The next largest killer was pollution in the workplace, which was linked to 800,000 worldwide deaths. Scientist Dr. Penny Woods said, air pollution is reaching crisis point. She said the people who pollution hit the hardest are those with breathing and lung problems, children and the elderly. This is Timothy reporting from Japan.
Okay, now guys, for me, of course, it's not too hard. I was able to catch, I think, basically 100% of this, but of course I am a native English speaker. So let's listen again, try once again to fill in those blanks, and let's see how it goes after that. So let's listen one more time.
Pollution is the world's biggest killer. This is breakingnewsenglish.com. A new study has found that pollution is now the world's biggest killer. 1 in 6 deaths worldwide is because of pollution. This is 16% of all global deaths. Most of these deaths were from non-infectious diseases caused by pollution. These include heart disease, lung cancer, and stroke. The study was published in the medical journal The Lancet. Researchers said most pollution-related deaths occurred in poorer countries. About 92% of these deaths were in low-income nations, especially countries where there is a lot of economic development, such as India and China. Bangladesh and Somalia were the worst affected countries. Brunei and Sweden had the lowest numbers of pollution-related deaths. Study co-author Karti Sandelia said pollution, poverty, poor health, and social injustice are deeply intertwined. He added, pollution threatens fundamental human rights, such as the right to life, health, well-being, and safe work. He said air pollution was the biggest killer. Air pollution led to 6.5 million premature deaths. The second biggest killer was water pollution, which caused 1.8 million deaths. The next largest killer was pollution in the workplace, which was linked to 800,000 worldwide deaths. Scientist Dr. Penny Woods said, air pollution is reaching crisis point. She said the people who pollution hit the hardest are those with breathing and lung problems, children and the elderly. This is Timothy reporting from Japan.
All right, guys, so I think we're going to stop it there after just listening twice. I know for me this might be easy, and for you guys this might be a lot harder, but we don't have all the time in the world, so I kind of want to move on and look at what went in the blanks here, and then we'll look at some of the questions, because of course, like I said before, we have a ton of questions to take a look at here. And we'll see how far we can get with the questions. If we have to go into the second class a little bit, that's okay, but I don't want to go into the second class too much. So let's see how it goes here. All right, so we got 12 blanks, and I think like a lot of the vocabulary in the blanks is not actually too hard, although some of it is. But let's see how it goes. So number one was a new study blank, and the blank here is has found that. Has found that. Okay, so a new study has found that pollution is now the world's biggest killer. 1 in 6 deaths worldwide is because of pollution. This is 16% of all global deaths. Most of, and then the answer was, these deaths were from non-infectious diseases caused by pollution. These include heart disease, lung cancer, and stroke. The study was published in the medical journal, The Lancet. Researchers said most pollution-related deaths occurred in poor countries, or in poorer countries. About 92% of these deaths were in, and then the answer was low-income nations. So that's sad. Like most of these pollution-related deaths are happening in poor countries, which maybe don't even make much pollution, but anyhow. Especially countries where there is a lot of economic development, such as India and China. Bangladesh and Somalia were the worst affected countries. Brunei and Sweden had, and our answer here is, had the lowest number. The lowest number. Okay, so Bangladesh and Somalia are really bad, but Brunei and Sweden are really, really good as far as pollution-related deaths. Okay. So, study co-author Karti Sandelia said pollution, poverty, poor health, and. So our answer for number 7 is poor health. and social injustice are deeply intertwined. He added, pollution threatens fundamental rights such, now there comes our next blank, number 8, as the right to, such as the right, to is actually already here, such as the right to life, health, well-being, and safe work. He said air pollution was the biggest killer. Air pollution led to 6.5 million, then our answer was premature deaths. Now you might be wondering, like, of course you guys know what mature means. Like, mature can have a number of different meanings, of course, right? But premature means like before mature, right? So that means people are dying before they really should be because of pollution, right? So that's a big problem, obviously. Okay, so number 10 here says, the next largest killer was pollution in the workplace, which was linked to 800,000 worldwide deaths. Oh, sorry guys, I think I skipped the previous sentence, but there was no blank there, but so it's okay. Anyhow, moving on. Scientist Dr. Penny Wood said, air pollution is something, something, something. It is reaching crisis point. So it's reaching a point where it's becoming a really, really massive problem, right? And of course, this problem is continuing, unfortunately. She said the people who pollution hit the hardest are those with breathing and lung problems, children and the elderly. And the elderly. Okay, guys, so we got all our blanks there. Hooray! Like I said before, I don't think a lot of the stuff in the blanks is incredibly hard, but maybe a bit hard to catch, right? Now, we have some true-false questions. So let's look at the true or false questions first and go over that. We have 8 of them. I think these are actually quite easy. So let's see how this goes. Number 1 is super easy. It says 1 in 6 deaths worldwide is because of pollution. Is this true or is this false? Look back at the actual text. And in, I think, the second sentence, it says 1 in 6 deaths worldwide is because of pollution. So yeah, our answer here is true. This is true, and that was pretty easy to catch, right? So T for true. 2, most deaths from pollution were because of infectious diseases. I think this is false because it says here most of these deaths were from non-infectious diseases caused by pollution. So no, they are not caused by infectious diseases. So our answer here is false. 3, most pollution-related deaths were in richer countries. Without even looking at this, I know this is false. I know this is not true. Because I remember, like, later on here, they were saying most of these deaths were in low-income nations, especially countries where there's a lot of economic development, such as India and China. Bangladesh and Somalia were the worst affected countries. So, yeah, no, most of the deaths are in poorer countries or developing countries. Number 4, Bangladesh and Sweden have the lowest pollution-related death rates. I think this is wrong because it's not Bangladesh and Sweden. I think it's Brunei and Sweden. But let's double check. Yes, I'm correct. It says Brunei and Sweden had the lowest number of pollution-related deaths. It's not Bangladesh. So it's trying to trick you here. This is also false. Number 5, a researcher said pollution and social injustice are strongly linked. Yes, I believe that researcher did say that. I think this is true. But let's double check. Yep, study co-author Karti Sandilia said, pollution, poverty, poor health, and social injustice are deeply intertwined. So just to double check. Yeah, pollution, poverty, poor health, social injustice. Yeah, pollution and social injustice. Yes, so this is true. Okay, number 6. The researcher said pollution threatens human rights. This is also true, I believe, because later, he said, he or she, well, he added, pollution threatens fundamental human rights, such as the right to life, health, well-being, and safe work. So this is true. Number 7, water pollution was the biggest killer. No, I think water pollution was the second biggest killer. Air pollution led to 6.5 million premature deaths. The second biggest killer was water pollution. So no, water pollution is the second biggest, not the biggest. So the answer is false. And number 8, a scientist said pollution is so bad it is reaching crisis point. And yes, scientist Dr. Penny Woods said air pollution is reaching crisis point. So yes, this is true. All right, guys, so we got our blanks. We got our true-false questions done. We're doing pretty good, making good progress, but we need to look at the back side of this sheet, or maybe for you guys, it is the second page, because we have comprehension questions and we have some discussion questions. So for the comprehension questions, I would like to write, maybe I will write a brief answer on the board. Of course, giving full, complete sentences is always best, right? But let's take a look at the questions. Maybe it's not always necessary. Maybe I can just give 1 or 2 word answers. Let's see. So number 1 was, how many deaths worldwide are caused by pollution? And the answer here, got to go back to the text again. 1 in 6 deaths worldwide is because of pollution. So basically, this is the same thing as the true-false questions. But let's just say here, 1 in 6 deaths are caused by pollution. And that's a lot of deaths, right? Number 2. What kind of cancer was mentioned? I think it was lung cancer. Yes. Lung cancer was mentioned. Okay. Number 3. What % of pollution-related deaths were in low-income nations? I don't know if it said the percentage, but let's take a look here. Okay. Yeah, about 92% of these deaths were in low-income nations. So 92% of deaths caused by pollution were in low-income nations. Okay, let's move on to number 4. What were the worst affected countries? I think it was Somalia and Bangladesh, but let me double check here. Yeah, Bangladesh and Somalia were the worst affected countries. So Bangladesh and Somalia were the worst affected. Okay, moving on to number 5. Number 5, we have what were the least affected countries. I think it's Sweden and Brunei. Brunei and Sweden. Brunei and Sweden were the least affected. So congratulations, Brunei, and congratulations, Sweden. Number 6. What kind of injustice is mentioned in the article? I think it's social injustice. Yes, just social injustice. Social injustice was mentioned. And there we go. So moving on to number 7. Number 7, what kind of pollution was the biggest killer? I think without even looking back at the sheet, I can remember that it's air pollution. 6.5 million people, yeah. Air pollution is the biggest killer, because I think water pollution was number 2. Number 8, how many people did water pollution kill? It was a lot of people, not as much as air pollution, but the second biggest killer was water pollution, which caused 1.8 million deaths. So how many people did water pollution kill? Water pollution killed 1.8 million people. That's a lot of people. That's like almost the population of Vancouver, basically. Number 9, what kind of pollution killed 800,000? I think it was workplace pollution. Yeah, pollution in the workplace. Yeah. Pollution in the workplace caused 800,000 deaths. Okay. Number 10. What kind of point did a scientist say air pollution is reaching as a crisis point? Yeah, Dr. Penny Woods said that pollution is reaching a crisis point. Okay, guys, good. So we got all the comprehension questions done. Hooray! All right, now we got about 5 minutes left before we take a break. We do have these discussion questions here. Let's take a brief look at them. I'll model an answer. This might go into the second class a little bit, but not too much. Number 1 here, good question. What images are in your mind when you hear the word crisis? Oh, that's a really good question. Usually when I hear the word crisis, I actually don't really think about pollution. When I hear crisis, when I hear the word crisis, the images that pop into my mind are explosions, fires, and kind of like people crying. I think for people like around my age, living in Canada or the United States, for example, 9/11 in 2001 in the United States in New York City, when the terrorists attacked the Twin Towers, that image is burned into my mind. Like I remember on that day, my mom woke me up and she said, "There's something happening in New York City. Let's watch the news." And we watched the news, and you could see the recording of these 2 planes hitting the Twin Towers, and that's like really burned into my mind. So I think when I hear the word crisis, sometimes I think about what happened on 9/11, unfortunately. But usually when I hear the word crisis, the real image that pops into my mind is, explosions, people crying, fires, this kind of stuff. Number 2, what is pollution like where you live? Okay, I'm pretty lucky. I live in Vancouver. It's not too bad here. Vancouver is a fairly large city, about 2.5 million people, maybe a little bit bigger. I cannot say that pollution is a big problem here. It really isn't, to be honest. So I don't think it's a huge crisis here. Yes, there's pollution caused by cars. There's a little bit of industry in Vancouver, but it's not so bad. For me, the biggest annoyance when it comes to pollution is just people not throwing their garbage into a garbage can or not recycling. And I honestly blame, the biggest problem sometimes is I see needles from homeless drug addicts. That really upsets me a lot because I have kids. Number 3, how affected are you by pollution? For me, I don't think I'm very affected. However, I believe, of course, in climate change. I think a city like Vancouver is getting hotter as the years go by, and I hate hot weather. I can't stand it when it's hot. So I'm not affected very much. I just don't like hot weather, and I think pollution is making hot weather worse. Number 4, how did pollution get to be this bad? That is a complicated question. How did pollution get this bad? I actually think in most of North America, actually in the United States and Canada, levels of pollution have decreased. A lot of people don't know that. They always think, oh, pollution is always increasing. That's not actually true. In the case of Canada and the United States, pollution has decreased a lot over the past 20, 30 years. But unfortunately, a lot of that pollution has just kind of gone over to China because many companies in the United States and Canada have moved manufacturing from here over to China, and of course their environmental policies are much weaker than they are over here. So I think China creates a lot of pollution. And what could I say here? How did pollution get to be this bad? I think as the population continues to grow, even though in Canada and the United States it's not growing, if we didn't have immigrants coming to Canada and the United States, our population would be slowly decreasing or dying, basically. But around the world, the population is growing. People need consumer goods. They need products. So we need to produce those products. Those products get produced in factories, which create pollution. So that's why I guess pollution is getting worse around the world, but is actually not a huge problem in Canada and the United States. Number 5, how much do you worry about pollution? I'm the father of 2 kids. Honestly, I don't worry about pollution too much. I think down the road I am concerned about climate change. I do have a plan in mind. If it suddenly got really, really bad, I would be going to the countryside for sure. But I am more worried about things like economic stability and in Vancouver, things like housing prices and the homeless issue. These are things, the housing prices and the homeless issue are the 2 biggest issues for me when it comes to living in Vancouver. How can we reduce the amount of pollution? That's a tough one. I think basically the average person should try to consume less stuff and we should try to recycle. That's the main thing. I think also we should try to drive less, right? Use public transportation, walk, ride a bike, so that you're not burning fossil fuels, you're not burning gas and oil to go to your workplace. I think that's a good idea. I think try not to buy useless products, right? Or when you're buying products, try to buy good quality products that will last a long time instead of buying junky garbage products that will fall apart quickly and need to be replaced because it just creates more pollution. Anyhow, guys, let's take a break though. We're at about 9:50 right now. We'll take a 10-minute break, and after the break, we'll continue with these questions just a little bit and then get into some reading. Okay, so I will see you guys again in about 10 minutes. Bye-bye. By PST, we are now in our second class on Wednesday doing Tuesday's material. So before the break, we almost completed the topic we were doing in the first class of listening. I just want to finish that off really quickly before we move into our reading article. So we were on we finished question 6, so we just need to look at 7, 8, and 9. And number 7, the question is, why are most deaths in poorer countries? That's a good question, and I think that's kind of a hard question, to be honest. My guess is the reason why most pollution-related deaths are in poor countries is probably because poor countries tend to have ineffective governments. And I think those governments are not creating policies that protect their people from pollution. And they're not creating good environmental policies. And a lot of those countries just have too much corruption, and they probably don't care enough about environmental policies and protecting their people. So that is the main reason I can think of as to why most deaths are in poorer countries. Okay, let's take a look at number 8. What do you think when you see pollution? That's a good question. So, like I said before, Vancouver doesn't have a lot of pollution, but sometimes you can notice in the summer. Recently, because of COVID-19, it's actually harder to see pollution. I think this has happened all over the world because of the fear of COVID-19. Less people are going to work, so less people are creating pollution. That is one of the few good things about COVID-19 is that there actually has been a reduction in the level of pollution. So anyhow, but when I see pollution in Vancouver, when it happens, it usually happens because of forest fires, because Vancouver is surrounded by a lot of forests, and every summer there tends to be quite a few forest fires, and when these forest fires get started, sometimes the smoke comes into the city. So when I see air pollution, usually I think, oh no, I guess there's a forest fire and the smoke is coming into the city. Oh, this sucks, right? So that's usually what I think. Okay, last question we have here is, what will happen if pollution gets worse? I think the answer here is pretty obvious. I think if pollution gets worse, I think more people will die due to pollution-related deaths like lung cancer, heart problems, these kind of things, right? That's what I think right now. Also, I do think global climate change will continue to get worse. And I think that will cause even more deaths, and I think that will cause a lot of migration from poor countries that just get too hot or experience desertification or something like that. So I think there will be more refugees and more migrants coming up to northern rich countries like America, Canada, European countries, Japan, Korea, etc. And they will be trying to get in because their countries will become basically unlivable. So I think a couple of decades from now, when global climate change gets really bad, I think we're going to see a massive humanitarian crisis. And I'm not sure how countries like Canada are going to be able to deal with it, because we try to be a nice country, but we have a lot of land, we don't have a big population, but we cannot accommodate everybody, right? We don't have the best economy right now, so we can try to help, but we can't do too much. Anyhow, that's about it, guys, for types of pollution, or this topic. Pollution is the world's biggest killer. We're done. Let's get off of this. And the next one I want you guys to take a look at here is called Culture, My Diary in Canada. And what we need to do here is do some reading, but moreover, we have a ton of questions. So take a look at that sheet there. I think I might have grabbed the wrong one here. Oh, okay, here is the correct one. I think this is the correct one. Okay, anyhow, culture, my diary in Canada. We have a quick warm-up section here. We got 2 warm-up questions. If you guys want to answer, just go ahead and give me an answer. Warm-up question number 1. What do you usually buy at the supermarket? Okay, well, my wife and I both go shopping together sometimes, or if I'm working, sometimes she'll go shopping by herself. What do we usually buy in the supermarket? My answer here could be pretty boring. We usually buy vegetables, fruits, dairy products, and protein. That is a really boring answer. Let me try to be more specific. What do we usually buy? Of course, milk, chicken, chicken and pork, sometimes beef, but more often chicken and pork. We eat a variety of different vegetables, so we buy a lot of different veggies. The veggies we buy most often are broccoli and tomato, although I know tomato is controversial because people are always debating, are tomatoes a fruit or a vegetable? Sometimes I see, oh, they're a fruit, right? And then other times I see, oh no, they're a vegetable, but whatever. We buy tomatoes and broccoli. Those are our main veggies, and spinach also. My wife likes eggplant, so sometimes we buy eggplant. As far as fruit goes, we try to buy seasonal fruits that are in season. So right now, berries. So for example, blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, etc. And they're really good here in Vancouver around this time of year and relatively cheap. Later in the year in winter, of course, they get really expensive. Yeah, that's about it. Of course, lots of other things like soups or something like that, you know. Anyhow, number 2, have you ever stolen something? Yeah, I think everybody has had that experience, most likely when they were a kid. I think if you're stealing something when you're an adult, there is something wrong with you. You shouldn't really be stealing as an adult, unless you're really poor and you need to really help your family, but that's not a really good excuse. Have you ever stolen something? Yes, I stole my wife's heart. Blech, right? Just kidding. Well, I guess that's true, but when I was a kid, what did I steal? I think I did steal sometimes. Yeah, one time I stole money from my younger brother, and then I remember feeling really guilty about it later and giving the money back. I don't think I ever stole anything from my parents. Oh no, when I was a teenager, I stole some whiskey from my dad, and I did get caught, and he was really angry later. Yeah, but not too much stealing, and since I've been an adult, no, I don't think I've stolen anything. Okay, anyhow, guys, before we read the main article, we have kind of a short warm-up reading here, and it says, Honesty Shopping in Switzerland. Okay, so we're going to Europe, and we're going to Switzerland. Yay! The land of the Alps. That, of course, the Alps are one of the most famous mountain ranges in the world. And Switzerland is the land of clocks, cheese, and chocolate, the 3 C's, right? Those are the things that they're famous for. Anyhow, let's read this together. It says, in the Swiss Alps, there are communities with tiny stores known as honesty shops. They sell fresh cheese, milk, bread, honey, and butter without any clerks. These stores are managed through the honor system. The customers just put their money in a small basket after finding what they need to buy. The amazing thing is, customer honesty and loyalty is very strong in these communities. So, would this kind of store be possible in your city? Okay, so that's a really interesting short little article. So I guess in Switzerland they have these places called honesty shops. There's no clerk, there's no employee there. So when you go there, you can find the things you want, and then you leave the money for those items in a basket, right? And this all works on trust. So I guess in these small communities, everybody probably knows each other and everybody trusts each other to pay the right amount. So I like this question at the end here. So would this kind of store be possible in your city? Now thinking about Vancouver, Vancouver doesn't have a lot of crime, but Vancouver does have problems with homelessness. So would honesty shops be possible in the city of Vancouver? Unfortunately, I'd have to say no, because I think some people would take advantage. They would go in, they would take whatever they want, they wouldn't pay, and they would just leave. So unfortunately, I don't think it would work. Would this work in a smaller city or town in Canada? I think some small communities in Canada, this would actually work. There are some small communities in Canada where everybody knows each other, everybody works together, and the people are very honest and trustworthy people. But if I think about my hometown has about 13,000 people. My hometown, unfortunately, also has kind of a problem with homeless people too. So even in my hometown, it doesn't really work. But some very small cities in Canada or very small towns, I think it would work. Now, before moving on, guys, we do have some words we need to take a look at. We have words like honesty, community, tiny, clerk, the honor system, and loyalty. All right, so let's talk about these words really quickly. What does the word honesty mean, right? Now, honesty is the noun, and honest, so the H is silent, it just kind of starts with the O sound. Honest is the adjective. Okay, so what is honesty and what is honest? Honesty is kind of the opposite of being untrustworthy or being a liar, right? If you are an honest person, you always tell the truth. You try to do what is right. If you are not honest, you are basically a liar, someone who does not tell the truth. And liar is a noun. But anyhow, like he is a liar, but he is a liar, but she is very honest, right? So yeah, honest people always tell the truth, try to follow the law, right? Anyhow, community. Community is kind of similar to like neighborhood, town, city, village. It's basically just a group of people who live together. So like in Vancouver, we might separate different parts of the city into different communities, right? The downtown community, Richmond community, Surrey community, New Westminster community, etc., etc. But basically community just means a group of people who live together. Tiny basically just means very small. And the opposite of this would be words like huge or massive, right? Tiny, what is tiny? What is really small? Like a lot of insects are quite tiny, right? They're hard to see, they're very small, at least insects in Canada. Tiny, tiny, tiny. Some items you might have to use to fix something like a screw can be quite tiny, like a tiny screw. But anyhow, tiny just means very, very, very small. Next term we have here is clerk. A clerk is basically just a person who works in a store. maybe they stock the shelves or they work as a cashier, right? And that is a clerk, so pretty basic. Then we have the honor system. The honor system is quite interesting. It is a system that depends on honesty and people's sense of honor. So actually Vancouver used to, Vancouver is kind of an interesting city because we have something called the SkyTrain. SkyTrain is a form of public transportation similar to like a subway or something like that, but the SkyTrain goes above ground sometimes, and sometimes below ground. But anyhow, right now if you go and you want to take the SkyTrain, you need to purchase a ticket. You have to pay some money, or you use your credit card, or you buy a monthly pass. So you have to pay to use the system, of course, right? But that only really started about 5 or 6 years ago. Prior to that system where you had to pay to buy a ticket, and then you have to go up to a gate and you have to validate the ticket, and then you can go through the gate. Before that, there were actually no gates, and the entire SkyTrain system worked on the honor system. The city was trying to trust people to buy a ticket without actually checking to see if they had a ticket. Now, of course, the city knew that sometimes people were not paying for tickets and riding the SkyTrain for free, so sometimes the police would have to go on the SkyTrain and check everybody's ticket to see did they actually purchase a ticket. But of course, I always thought this system, unfortunately, the honor system, it sounds really nice, but in Vancouver, it didn't work. Too many people were cheating the system. I think 20 or 30% of the people taking the SkyTrain did not purchase a ticket, right? Because people thought like, oh, well, nobody's checking, so why should I buy a ticket? I'll just take the SkyTrain for free, right? Why not? So the honor system, it really relies on people's sense of duty, responsibility, and honor. And it really relies on trust. Like the individual citizens have to trust the government, and the government has to trust individual systems to pay for something without actually seeing if they did. And it's a really nice idea, but it is not practical, and it did not work in Vancouver, and that's why they eventually had to install gates. Anyhow, last term we have here is loyalty. And loyalty, that's a good word. Loyalty, right? So loyalty is the noun, and if you have a good sense of loyalty, we would say you are loyal. That is the adjective form. Loyal means like being reliable to a person or organization, or maybe a country or something like that. So we often say that, a good example of the word loyal is man's best friend. And who is man's best friend? It's not Brian, my neighbor, it's dogs, right? Dogs are man's best friend. That's a very common expression in Canada and the United States. And we say that dogs are very loyal animals, right? When you own a dog, the dog always pays attention to you. You are the owner, you are the master, you are their friend, right? And their family member. And they are loyal to you. They trust you, you trust them, and they won't cheat on you, right? They're not going to go find a new owner or do something like that, right? Now, if you are a loyal partner, right? Let's say you have a relationship with your wife or your girlfriend or something like that, and you don't cheat on your wife or girlfriend or boyfriend if you have one, right? Whatever it is. then you are a loyal partner, right? You love your wife or your girlfriend or whatever. You don't cheat on them, right? Or if you are loyal to your country, right? You are a loyal Canadian, a loyal American, a loyal Japanese, Korean, Brazilian, Chilean citizen, whatever. If somebody from another country says like, hey, can you sell me some information about your country? If you were loyal to your country, you'd say no, and then you report them to the police or something, right? So loyal is a good one. If somebody says you are loyal, that is definitely a good compliment, right? It's good to be a loyal husband or a loyal wife, right? Because of course, when you get married, you make a promise not to cheat on your partner. You're going to be loyal to them, and that's very important, right? So that is the meaning of loyal. All right, guys, so let's take a look. After the vocab here, we have a quick check. We have a few quick questions. So we've got number 1 here. We have 3 quick true-false questions. Okay, actually, let me erase the board so I can write the answers on the board here. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, so guys, our quick check. Number 1, true or false. These stores have clerks. So these honor-based stores or honesty shopping in Switzerland, they rely on the honor system. T or F, true or false. Anyhow, A, these stores have clerks. No, they do not. That is false. That's the main idea of these honor stores, is that there are no employees inside, there are no clerks. Okay. B, people don't have to use money at these stores. Well, they're supposed to use money. They are supposed to pay for these products when they're leaving. So that's not actually true. I'd say that's false. However, I guess if somebody is dishonest and they don't like the honor system, of course, they could just go there and steal everything. Customer honesty and loyalty is very high in these communities. Yes, that is true, right? In these communities in Switzerland, people are very honest and they are loyal to their communities, and that's why the system works in those countries. And the idea is so nice. But yeah, unfortunately, I just think it doesn't work in Vancouver. But number 2, what kinds of things do people buy at the honesty shop? Okay, pretty easy. Take a quick look back at the article. It said fresh cheese, milk, bread, honey, and butter. Okay, so that's our answer basically. People can buy fresh cheese. Sounds good to me. Also, fresh butter is really good too. Whoa, same with milk. Fresh cheese. What was it? Fresh cheese, milk. Oh, bread, like fresh bread or recently baked bread is always really good. Honey and butter. Pretty awesome. So like a lot of kind of staple, important foods, right? Okay, number 3. Fill in the blanks with similar words. There are something with something stores known as honesty shops. The stores are managed blank. That means the stores have no blank. Okay, so basically you have to use the vocabulary that we just took a look at to fill in the blank here. So there are blank with blank stores known as honesty shops. Okay. The stores are managed through blank period. That means the stores have no blank. Okay, good, we got it. Okay, so of course we have hints here that make this a little bit too easy, but there are neighborhoods. So instead of neighborhoods, of course, the answer we're looking for is communities. The plural form though. Communities. There are communities with, and then our second blank here says small. But of course, we didn't look at the word small, we looked at the word tiny. There are communities with tiny stores known as honesty shops. The stores are managed through, and then it says honesty rules. So of course that is the honor system. That means the stores have no workers or no clerks. All right, and we are good. We got it done, everybody. Yay! All right, so let's move on with this here. And what do we have? Oh, we have a very beautiful picture of the Swiss Alps and an example of an honesty shop. Yeah, Swiss Alps, it's extremely beautiful. However, as you guys know, I'm from Canada. We have the Rocky Mountains. The Rocky Mountains are better, right? The Rocky Mountains way bigger. In the Rocky Mountains, we actually have lakes there. It's way more beautiful than the Swiss Alps, right? Just kidding. Both are really nice. Okay. So what we have here is our main reading article. We got 2 paragraphs, guys. It says Life in Canada, diary writing number 8. Okay, so let's find out what's going on with this guy today. So in this diary, he says, I was so embarrassed today. I went out for dinner with my friends after school at a really nice restaurant. I ordered a big bacon burger with yam fries and I got a milkshake for dessert. When the bill came, my friends and I decided not to split it, so we paid for our own. The bill was $21.50. I gave the server a 20, a loonie, and 2 quarters. So I paid exactly $21.50. However, the server looked at me and she seemed angry. I didn't know why. I felt really weird and bad. After I got back home, I talked to my Canadian roommate about it. He told me that we must add a tip to the bill when we eat in a restaurant. He said a tip is extra money you give when the server is very nice. If you are unhappy with the service, you can leave a tiny tip. But if you are happy, you should leave a big one. I felt so bad because I didn't leave a tip for her, but I liked her service. That's why she was upset. So today I learned a new Canadian custom. I must remember to tip every time I eat out. I think I'll go broke very soon. Okay, now actually this is a really good diary entry because this is very honest and this is very realistic, right? Like if you... Now I think most countries like in the West, and in the West I mean like North America and Europe, but also I believe in South America too, we have this culture where we have to tip people, right? However, there is a major difference between North America and Europe. In Europe, they don't always give a tip, and when they give a tip, it's relatively small. In Canada and America these days, it depends, but I think these days the average tip, it's terrible, it's too much now, is about 15% of the cost of your meal or your order. If you want to tip more because the service was really good, it's generally 20%, or if it was really, really good and you were really super happy, then you give 25%. If the service was adequate but nothing special, you give 10. If the service was bad, you give 5. And if the service was extremely bad, you give nothing, right? Now, I think it's too high in my opinion. When I was growing up, the rule that I learned was that adequate service gets 5%, and good service gets 10%, and then 15% is like really super awesome one time a year tip to a server that was super awesome, right? But now all of a sudden the numbers have gotten much higher. 15% is average, 20% is also kind of normal. So I feel like the tips keep increasing. Maybe I'm a cheap guy, I don't know, but I think it's just too expensive here. Now, before we move on, we do have to look at the vocab that was covered in this article here. We have words like embarrassed, right? Like, of course, embarrassed is similar to feeling ashamed, right? If you're embarrassed, that means you get nervous and you start blushing because you did something that makes you look bad, right? But embarrassed and ashamed basically have kind of the same meaning, although ashamed is kind of stronger and more connected to morality, whereas embarrassed is more like you slip on a banana and people laugh at you and you turn red and you're like, oh, I'm so embarrassed, oh, I'm so nervous, right? Okay, next term we have here is to go out for dinner. Very simple. To go out for dinner means to leave your apartment, leave your house, leave wherever you are living, and go and eat at a restaurant, right? So this is useful, right? Like, let's say you want to hang out with your roommate, or you want to take your wife somewhere. You say, hey, let's go out for dinner. Let's go out for dinner at blah, blah, blah restaurant, right? Let's go out for dinner at Five Guys. Let's go out for dinner at Mickey D's. Let's go out for dinner at the Thai Palace, restaurant or something, right? Okay, next one we have is bill. Bill can stand for basically two different things. Now, bill can actually also be a verb. To bill you means to give you a bill. Every month I am billed by my service provider for my cell phone, right? I receive a bill and I have to pay that bill, right? Which reminds me, actually, I need to pay that bill. But a bill is, as a noun, is usually a slip of paper that shows how much money you owe. So when you go to a restaurant, you eat some food, and then after you say, could I get the bill, please? You see the bill, you see how much you have to pay, and then you pay the bill, right? So that's bill. Next term is split it, to split it. Now, to split usually means to kind of cut something in half. So to split as a verb can have a similar meaning to divide, right? If you're going to split the bill, you're going to pay for one part, they're going to pay for another part. It doesn't exactly mean that it's going to be 50-50, but it basically contains that meaning. Now, a 20 just means a $20 bill, $20, 20 bucks, right? Loonie in Canada is $1, right? Maybe I'll write that down. Loonie equals $1. And then we have Toonie. Toonie equals $2. It sounds kind of silly, right? But I guess that's just Canada. Okay, after that we have a quarter, and this is a Canadian coin. Quarter is 25 cents. A dime is 10 cents. And a nickel is 5 cents. So a quarter, a dime, and a nickel, a 20, a 10, a loonie, a toonie, seam. I think you guys are okay with seams. Something seems like something, it looks like it, or it feels like it. If somebody looks sick, you could say to them, you seem sick, right? Like you look and you feel like you're sick. So seam, I think you guys are okay. Tip. Tip can also have multiple meanings. As a verb, to tip somebody means to give them some extra money for their service, right? But a tip as a noun can mean something similar to a hint or a useful piece of advice. So whether you're using tip as a verb or a noun, they do have kind of a different meaning. So tip as a noun is a bonus amount of money for good service. Meanwhile, tip as a verb is wait. Yeah, I messed this up. I was not thinking. Let me erase this. Tip as a noun. tip as a noun, well, okay, it can mean a bonus amount of money. That's true. Or a useful piece of advice. But tip as a verb means to give a bonus amount of money for good service. There. Okie dokie, okie dokie, okie dokie. So let's move on. Next term is upset. If you are upset, you are sad or you are angry, right? If you have an upset stomach, it means your stomach is in pain, right? So it depends. If you say, I am upset, it doesn't mean that you are in pain. Instead, it just means you're disappointed or you're angry or you're sad. Something like that, right? If you say, I have an upset stomach, then that means your stomach feels, not sad or disappointed. Your stomach doesn't really have feelings, but it feels pain. Anyhow, next term here is custom. When we were reading the diary, they said, oh, this is a new Canadian custom for them, right? And a custom is like a tradition, something that, in every culture there are many different customs, right? In Canada, it's a common custom to open the door and hold the door open for somebody behind you, whether they're a woman, a man, an elderly person, a child, whoever. That is a common custom and kind of a common courtesy in Canada. But I know in a country like Korea, for example, it is a custom to bow to someone you know, especially if they're older than you. Anyhow, last one here is really good. It is the phrasal verb to go broke. If you say, I am going broke, that means you are running out of money. You will soon be bankrupt. You will soon have no money. If you say, I went broke, that means, you have no money at all. So it's very similar to like bankrupt or to run out of money. If you just say, I am broke, it means you have no money. I am going broke. I'm losing money. I will be broke soon. Okay, guys, good. So let's move on. We've got comprehension questions and we have some discussion questions. Okay, let me erase the board first. Sorry, 1 second. And, okay, comprehension question number 1. Why was the writer embarrassed? So the guy was embarrassed, but why was he embarrassed? Comprehension questions. Number 1. Why was the writer embarrassed? Well, basically they were embarrassed because the server seemed to be upset. And they didn't know why. And then later they learned that the reason why the server was upset and angry at them was because they didn't give a tip, right? So I think our answer would basically be they were embarrassed because they didn't tip at the restaurant. Whoa, such a big, terrible thing in Canada. You always have to tip. Anyhow, number 2, what is a toonie, a loonie, and a quarter? How much money is that? Oh, we already talked about that, but basically 20 is $20 bill. So bill can also be used to describe, paper money, even though the Canadian money is not in paper. It's a special form of plastic. But anyhow, loonie is $1. And of course, a quarter is 0.25, right? Or Better just to say 25 cents. Okay. Let's take a look, guys. Number 3. Learning how to, talk about Canadian money is useful if you're living in Canada, right? You just have to remember that this doesn't really translate to the United States, but with coins, Americans, I think coins are the same in the United States. Like a quarter is 25 cents, and then they do have dimes and nickels, so that part is the same. Americans also still use pennies, like 1-cent coins. Canada does not use pennies anymore. But Americans, of course, don't have loonies and toonies. They don't have coins for that. They have $1 bills, and then they don't have $2 bills or coins. But they have like $1 bills, $5 bills, $10 bills, 20s, 50s, 100s, etc., right? I think they have $500 bills. I think Canada does too, but it's really uncommon to see them. But anyhow, number 3. Why was the server upset? Well, this is basically the same answer as number 1. They were upset because they didn't get a tip. They didn't get that tip, so they were upset. And like this is common in Canada. Like if you're a server and you don't get a tip, like you will be upset. You might think that's kind of like, how can I say, kind of silly or kind of stupid. Like, why should you expect a tip? Like you shouldn't be upset if you don't get one. But like servers don't make a lot of money unless they get tips. They kind of live off of tips. So tips are actually really important for their income. So they do have a good reason to be upset. Anyhow, number 4, when should you leave a tiny tip and a big one? I am not the best person to talk about this because people say I'm kind of cheap, but I'm going to try. Okay, tiny tip, big tip. I already kind of talked about this before, and we're going to divide these up. When should you leave a tiny tip? Basically, you should leave a tiny tip if you were upset with the service, but it wasn't terrible. Basically, I'd say if the service was bad, leave a tiny tip. If the service was terrible, if you went somewhere and the service was extremely bad, then don't leave a tip, right? That's the way to show the server, like, hey, I'm not satisfied with your service and this sucks, so no tip. I've done that maybe 3 or 4, like I've been in Vancouver a pretty long time here, a little bit more than 10 years. But there have been 3 or 4 occasions in Vancouver where I did not give a tip because the service was so bad. And on one of those occasions, the server, the waiter, no, in this case it was a waitress, it was a woman. She followed my wife and I out of the restaurant. She was like, why didn't you give me a tip, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, and I went over the reasons with her. You were rude, you didn't bring our food on time, you gave us the wrong food, you never checked on us, and you kept frowning at us, so your service was terrible. And then she yelled at us and we just walked away. She was an awful, awful waitress. So yeah, if you do have a really bad dining experience in Canada, do not tip. If the service was bad, but not terrible, like maybe the service was lazy, a little bit rude or something, then give a tiny tip. But it's sometimes hard to tell the difference between bad and terrible, but when terrible happens, you'll know it. Anyhow, big tip. I would say for me, if the service was super excellent, and I would say, okay, for me, super excellent, knowledgeable, and friendly, then you should leave a big tip. So for me, I feel like if you're going to give a big tip, and a big tip these days in Canadian culture or in the culture in Vancouver, a big tip would be 20% or more. For me, that would mean the service needs to be really excellent. The server needs to be knowledgeable. Like maybe you're in a nice restaurant and they tell you about the wine and all the different kinds of wine, and they really help you out a lot, and they know a lot about the dishes and about the drinks, and they're friendly to boot, then yes, leave a big tip. But I don't leave a big tip very often, maybe once a year. That's about it. So that's about me. That's me anyhow. Okay, number 5 and number 6. Oh my God, let's try to get this done before we take a break here. Number 5, why does the writer say, I think I'll go broke very soon? Basically, because tipping is expensive. If you're living in a big city like Vancouver and you go out often and you have to tip, it's going to cost you a lot of money. So that's why he's saying he'll go broke soon, because he'll run out of money tipping people. Okay, number 6, what does split the bill mean? Basically, it means to split the bill means to divide the bill in half. Like if you're eating just with one other person, if there's just the two of you, and you say, hey, let's split the bill, means you're gonna divide that bill in half, or like you're gonna pay your part, they're gonna pay their part, right? You're gonna go Dutch is what we sometimes say. Okay guys, so we got the comprehension questions done. We do have some discussion questions. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and these are interesting questions. I'd like to know what your guys' answers are, because of course I live in Canada, but I want to know what, dining or restaurant culture is like in your country. But, we only have a few minutes here and we're going to take a break. So I think it'd be better to take a break first. After the break, we'll get these questions done, and then we'll look at our last topic for today, which is all about stories, the 7 basic types of stories, and having a quick discussion on some vocab that is used when we talk about stories. So yeah, let's take a break first and then look at this stuff. So I'm just gonna erase the board. Yeah, we got like a minute and a half here, but it's not really long enough to get into anything. And yeah, so here we go, erasing the board. I'd be interested to hear from South American students, whether you're Brazilian or Chilean or Mexican. Well, Mexico is not South American, but Latin American, Peruvian, Ecuadorian, whatever. Like, is there a tipping culture in your guys' country? I think there is. Maybe it's not as bad as Canada, United States, where we seem to spend so much money on tips now. It's gotten like really, really ridiculous. So anyhow. All right, guys, but yeah, I'm going to take a break, and you guys take a break too, and enjoy your break. And yes, I'll see you again in about 10 minutes. Well, I have to stand here and wait here for the person to turn off the video for a second, but yeah. So anyhow, enjoy your break, guys, and I'll see you again in 10 minutes. She still hasn't come here. Why is it taking so long? Okay, well, we're still taking a break, so. Sorry, I already said I was taking a break. Yeah. To Live PST. We are now in our third class here, and I just want to finish off the reading that we were doing in the second class. We were at the very last part here with some discussion questions. We just have 4 of them. After this, let's get into talking about stories. But our first discussion question here is, how often do you eat out? So I'd be interested to hear from you guys. Maybe you guys could write down how often you eat out. Now, in my case, or in my family's case, how often do we eat out? We probably eat out more recently than we did in the past because we're both very tired because we had a baby in early June. Yeah, I'd say about once a week. Yeah, we eat out about once a week these days. And usually we just get something kind of convenient. We don't actually go to a restaurant. That's not really possible right now with a young baby. So we usually pick something up or have it delivered. Okay, number 2, have you experienced an embarrassing moment like this while in Canada or another country? Well, I grew up here and I grew up with tipping. So no, I have not experienced an embarrassing story where I didn't tip. So I'm trying to think about a time when I was living in Korea, if I had an embarrassing story in a restaurant. No, not really. Can't. Well, I'm sure I've had embarrassing times in a restaurant, maybe because of drinking too much, but I can't really remember anything specific. Yeah, embarrassing time in a restaurant. No, I'm gonna have to say no, but maybe you guys have. So if you have, please write down your story because I like reading embarrassing stories. But I'm gonna have to say no, I have not. Sorry, that answer is so boring, guys. But I can't honestly think of an embarrassing story in a restaurant right now. Is there a tipping custom in your country? Yes, there is. And I'm going to add here, tipping in Vancouver, Canada is quite expensive. Like I told you guys before the break, I think the average tip here now is about 15% of the cost of your meal. Good service is 20%, excellent service is 25% or more. If the service is bad, you go with 10%. If it's really bad, you go with 5%. And if it's absolutely garbage service, you give nothing. But that's pretty uncommon. Okay, guys, our last question here is, what is good service and bad service in your opinion? Wow. That is a tough question. It's easier to talk about bad service, honestly, but IMO, which means in my opinion. In my opinion, good service means that the server is friendly, quick, knowledgeable, and attentive. Like, what I mean here is the server pays attention to their customers, right? And they try to understand what the customer wants and listen to them, right? By knowledgeable, like friendly and quick, that's easy to understand. By knowledgeable, I mean like the server knows the products that the restaurant is serving. They know all about the wine or the beer. They know all about the food. They know maybe what beer matches what dish or what wine matches what dish. And they make good recommendations. So I like to see that the server is really knowledgeable and like kind of intelligent when it comes to their job. Of course, friendly service is always a good thing. And if they're quick, that's really awesome. Actually, the best service I've ever gotten from someone was not in a restaurant, but actually when I was on a plane, because my wife works for Delta Airlines. So sometimes we can take advantage of her travel benefit, and I was on a flight from Seattle to Tokyo one time. And I was really lucky. I got first class. So if you work for, you know, any kind of flight company, Delta Airlines, Air Canada, Korean Air, Singapore Air, JAL, etc., one of the best parts about that job is that you can fly for free, basically, right? You just pay the small amount of taxes. It's really awesome. But also, if you're married, your partner can fly for free as well. So I was on a flight to Tokyo from Seattle, and there was an older man who was working in the first class. And this guy was just super awesome. He was quick, he was friendly, and he was really, really knowledgeable. Like, he's like, oh, eat this dish and then have some scotch and you'll go to sleep. And like, I can never sleep on a flight. It's like one problem that I seem to have. But this guy, he gave me this special kind of dessert. And then after, he told me to drink some scotch, this really nice Scotch whiskey. And he said, drink it up and you will go to sleep. Trust me. And I thought, like, nah, you know, whatever. And this is like 2 hours into a 10-hour flight to Tokyo, right? But anyhow, I followed his advice. I ate this dessert, which was really good, and then I had this scotch, and I fell asleep. And when I woke up, we were landing in Tokyo. So I was like, wow, like, he was right. He was right on the money. Like, his service was good, it was friendly, it was quick, and he was knowledgeable. He knew what he was talking about. So I was so impressed by this older gentleman, actually. Now, we got to talk about bad service. So, in my opinion, good service means that the service is friendly, quick, knowledgeable, and attentive. On the other hand, bad service means the server doesn't seem to care, isn't friendly, and I'm going to write here in parentheses or brackets, and possibly rude, and doesn't work well. Like, for me, bad service just means the person is kind of lazy, they're not friendly, possibly they're even rude, and they just don't seem to care about their job. And like, I really can't, how can I say? I really can't respect someone who doesn't care about their job. Like, if this is your job, you know, maybe you don't like your job, but it's just temporary, right? Why don't you try to do your job well? It just doesn't make sense to me not to try when you have a job. You're getting paid for this, so you might as well do the best you can do. So it's really frustrating when I go somewhere and the service is really bad. And like I said, like, if, you know, you're living in Canada or America, and if the service actually is really, really bad, don't give a tip. Don't feel like you always have to give a tip, right? It's not often that I don't give a tip, but it's happened at least 4 times since I came here. So like, once every 2 or 3 years, we go somewhere and we experience really, really bad service, I will not give them a tip. One other thing I hate in Vancouver, especially these days, because of COVID-19, like, a lot of restaurants are still not open. Some are, but a lot of them are open just for like pickup or takeout. And one thing I really hate is, actually, this happened yesterday. We ate out because we had a fire in our apartment recently, but I went to pick up some takeout sushi at a place called Momo Sushi, which is actually, if you ever come to Vancouver, don't go to Momo Sushi. It's just awful, terrible garbage, but it's cheap. Anyhow, so I went there, and, you know, I'm going to pay for it, but then they also ask for a tip. And it's like, what am I tipping for, right? You didn't actually give me service. You just made the food, and then I'm taking it. I'm okay to pay 5% or 10%, But a lot of the debit machines that they're using in Vancouver now, when you go to pay a tip as a percentage, it starts at 15% as the lowest, right? It goes 15, 20, 25. And that's just ridiculous. Like, what am I paying 15% tip for? You didn't give me any service. All you said was, hello, what's your number? I gave you my number, and then you gave me the food. So why am I giving you a big tip? It just feels like they don't really deserve it. So I just consider that to be kind of something we call BS in Canada. But I'm not going to explain BS. Anyhow, let me erase this here, guys. And let's move on to our last thing for today. There's actually 2 more sheets. And we're supposed to talk about stories in general. And do you like stories? Of course, I think everybody likes a good story, right? And we can divide stories into different types. So what we have here, the first one we should look at here is the 7 basic types of stories, written by or created by Amna Khan. Okay, interesting stuff. So these are all the basic kind of typical stories. We've got like overcoming the monsters, rags to riches, the quest, voyage and return, comedy, tragedy, and rebirth, right? So let's try to, like, usually we can divide any kind of story into one of these types here. So let's read about these types. The first one is very common. It is overcoming the monster. So overcoming the monster is about the hero learns of a great evil threatening the land and sets out to destroy it. Okay, so we could say something like, maybe you guys know the book Lord of the Rings, right? Which was also a trilogy, series of 3 movies that was made, I think, in the early 2000s, but like the best trilogy ever, right? So yeah, but basically that describes Lord of the Rings. There's this great evil monster, you know, Sauron, who is going to destroy the planet, but our heroes set out to stop him, right? And that's just a very common story, very basic, right? There's some kind of evil thing, and the characters, the heroes, are going to fight it and destroy it. Okay, number 2, another very basic, very common type of story is called rags to riches. Now, rags means like cloth, like, you know, tattered cloth, looks like garbage, looks poor. So rags to riches is all about a poor person becoming rich and successful in the end. So it says, the initially poor hero blossoms into a mature figure who ultimately gets riches, a kingdom, and the perfect mate. So basically it just means like somebody starting in poor circumstances, they don't have any money, they're unsuccessful in life, and then they become successful. They, you know, get a lot of money, they find the perfect mate, the perfect partner. They take control of the kingdom or the country, right? But rags to riches is also another very common type of story. Our hero starts out poor, but eventually becomes very successful. Okay, number 3 is the quest. And quest is basically another word for like mission. It's not so commonly used. Quest is mostly used when we're talking about, I don't know, fairy tales and stuff, right? But the quest here says, the hero sets out on a mission, facing many obstacles and temptations along the way. So the hero has a mission and he goes out, but he faces obstacles, barriers, problems, issues that they have to overcome, right? And also temptations. What are temptations, right? If something is tempting you, it is a temptation, right? A temptation is a noun. And whoops, I added an unnecessary A there. Temptation. So the verb here is to tempt. And the noun is temptation. Anyhow, a temptation is something that kind of like tries to attract you towards it, right? Like if you're, I don't know, if you're poor, for example, and you see some money, you see a $20 bill on the road. Of course, you're going to be tempted by it. You're going to be like, I want that money. I want that, right? Maybe you shouldn't take it. It's not your money, but you're like, oh, I'm so tempted by it, right? Or maybe, I don't know, it's been a really hot day and you see a cold beer sitting on a table. It's not your beer. You didn't order it. You didn't pay for it, but nobody has it, right? And you're like, oh, I really want that cold beer. Oh, I shouldn't take it. It's not mine, but I'm going to take it. Anyhow, that is temptation. And to be tempted, you could say that beer is tempting me, right? It's really like calling my name, like, come here and drink me. I am cold and refreshing, right? Anyhow, but yeah, in the quest type of story, hero goes out and they face obstacles and temptations, but they usually beat them. Okay, number 4, another common type of story is voyage and return. It says the hero ventures to a strange land, overcoming the threats it poses, and returns a changed person, right? So they set out, maybe sometimes they start as like a spoiled child and they're very rude, but then suddenly they set out, maybe there's an accident and they land on an island. It's a totally different place for them and they experience some threats and they overcome these issues. And when they finally return at the end of the story or the end of the book, they are a changed person. They become a better, stronger version of themselves. So also very common. Next one is comedy. Of course, a comedy is just a light and humorous story with a happy and cheerful ending, right? Everybody likes comedies, right? They're not usually very complicated. They can be, but like usually they're just kind of fun and they make you laugh and they make you feel good. Okay, number 6 is tragedy. Tragedy, whenever you hear the word tragedy, just think that something bad is going to happen, right? The adjective form of tragedy is kind of also useful too. So let me write that down. Tragedy is the noun and the adjective form is tragic. Tragic. A tragic story, right? Anyhow, it says the protagonist is a villain whose death is a cause for rejoice, right? So the main person in the story is actually a bad person. They are a villain, which means bad person. So yeah, basically a villain is the opposite of a hero, or basically a bad or evil person. So in a tragedy, usually the person is, kind of a bad person, but in the end, they die and then people are happy, but it's kind of sad because, the main person dies. I think a good example of a famous kind of tragic story or tragedy would be, actually Shakespeare made a lot of like tragic stories or tragic plays, would be Macbeth. If you ever read that one, it's like probably one of Shakespeare's better plays. This guy, he's kind of a lord in Scotland, and then he sees a chance to kill the king and then to become king himself. So he kills the king in a really awful way. He becomes a king, but he's very paranoid, and then he makes everybody hate him in the end, and then somebody kills him, and then Scotland is really happy that he dies. But it's a tragedy because at first he's not a bad guy, but then he just goes crazy with power. Anyhow, number 7 is called rebirth. So being born again, basically. It says a story of reinvention and renewal. These often start off with tragic tones, then blossom into happy endings. Okay. All right, guys, so those are the 7 basic types of stories. It's just some interesting info. But let's take a look at our actual discussion paper today, which involves looking at some vocab first. So take a look at this one here. It just says stories. And we have some expressions to look at first. The first one is a tall tale. Now, beneath the term, we have an example. And then on the right side, we have an explanation or the meaning of this expression. So let's look at the meaning first. That kind of makes more sense. A tall tale is something that is not true. It is an elaborate lie, an extreme exaggeration. So the difference between a tall tale and a lie is that a tall tale is usually like a complicated lie. It's like a very long story, but it's all basically garbage. It's all a lie. Yeah, it's an extreme exaggeration. So the example here we have is, I feel like your story about getting mugged by a street gang is a bit of a tall tale. So somebody's saying to another person, like, I think that story you told me about getting mugged, it's not exactly true, right? You're kind of lying to me, right? However, in my case, this did happen to me, and it's not a tall tale. But anyhow, now within this here, so tall tale means elaborate lie or complicated story that is basically a lie anyhow. We also have this word mug, right? Now, this mug is being used as a verb. Mug is a noun. We know what mug as a noun is. A mug is basically like a coffee cup, right? You probably have a mug at home, right? But mug as a verb is totally different. Basically, a mug as a verb is similar to like to rob somebody. Rob somebody using violence or the threat of violence. And that is unfortunately what mug means, right? So I don't know, it's not like a common experience to have been mugged, right? But I've been mugged. Maybe some of you guys out there, you've been mugged. In my case, I was hit, but they also told me they were going to cut me with a knife, and I had to give them money. Unfortunately, it really sucked. Anyhow, it happened here in Vancouver. Again, Vancouver is a very safe city, but you do have to be a little bit careful. You can get mugged here if you're not careful. Anyhow, a tall tale, just remember it means, if you say, hey, that's a tall tale, you're saying like, hey, that's not true. That's kind of a lie, right? Let's take a look at the next one. The next expression is, I smell a rat. I smell a rat. I smell a rat. Now, rats, of course, are dirty creatures, right? They usually carry diseases. They're disgusting, right? Nobody likes rats. If you say, I smell a rat, what you're saying is like, I suspect that someone in the group has betrayed us. Somebody is a traitor, right? Somebody is not being loyal to us, right? Now, the example we have here is, there's no way that anybody should have known about our plan. I smell a rat. Now, this is maybe an expression that you might see more commonly used in a movie. The best example I can think of right now is the crime movie, the criminal drama with Leonardo DiCaprio. It was set in Boston. The Departed. Now, if you haven't watched The Departed, it's a great movie, highly recommend it. It's actually based on a movie from Hong Kong originally. But yeah, check out the movie, The Departed. If you like movies about crime, you're gonna like The Departed. But in The Departed, Leonardo DiCaprio's character is an undercover cop. He's a policeman, but he's undercover. He's pretending to be a criminal, a gangster, and he gets hired by this gang. And then, of course, he's taking information and giving it to the police, right? And the police are able to use this to kind of crack down on the gang. So the gang leader says to DiCaprio's character, says, I smell a rat. He suspected that somebody in his criminal organization was betraying him and working with the police, and he was right. And that's why he used that expression, I smell a rat. So you guys are probably not going to use this very often, but if you suspect somebody in your workplace has betrayed you, maybe they're saying bad things about you to the boss, you can say, man, I smell a rat. I don't trust everybody here, right? Okay, but let's take a look at our next expression. It is to tie the knot. And this is a good one. I like it. I use it sometimes. To tie the knot just means to get married. We don't have many expressions in English that that talk about getting married, but this is one of them. To tie the knot. And you just need to think about the meaning of this. If you break it down, right? You know, tie, right? Not tie the noun, but tie your shoelaces. It looks like the video stopped and is no longer working, guys. I hope you guys can still hear me, but yeah, looks like, okay, no, it looks like I'm still moving in the other part. But maybe it's not working on Facebook. But anyhow, to tie the knot. When you tie a knot, like when you're tying your shoes with your shoelaces, it creates a knot in the middle, right? So to tie a knot, it's like two people coming together, tying a knot, right? So when they get married, they become one. They become a knot. That's why we use this expression, because it makes sense. But anyhow, to tie the knot, sometimes we also say to get hitched. But yeah, both of those expressions just mean to get married, right? So if you say, hey, let's tie the knot, or hey, let's get hitched, or hey, let's get married, they all have the same meaning, right? The example we have here is, I'm so excited to tie the knot. I think we're going to get married in Vegas. Wow, they're going to get married in Vegas, right? That's actually a fairly common thing to do, I think, if you're American, and not just American, if you're Canadian as well. Actually, my younger brother and his wife had their wedding in Vegas. It was pretty nice. Food was good. They tied the knot in Vegas. Okay, let's take a look at our last expression here, which is a good one. I also use this once in a blue moon. Now, think about how often you see a blue moon. What is a blue moon? I don't know, actually. But you barely ever see this, or maybe it doesn't exist. So if you say, I do something once in a blue moon, you're saying, I rarely do this thing. So once in a blue moon is an expression related to frequency, and it just means rarely. Now, how you would use this in a sentence is actually pretty easy. You would usually just say, I, he, she, they. I do something. You know, I do the dishes, I go shopping, I go swimming, do something once in a blue moon. And so you're basically just saying, I do this rarely. It just doesn't really happen, right? Now, if I think of my own examples for myself, yeah, it's true. Like, I go clothes shopping once in a blue moon. Actually, like, since COVID-19 got started, of course, you know, there's not a lot of opportunities to go shopping right now. But yeah, I have not gone clothes shopping for this entire year. I think I bought shoes, but that was just online. But even if COVID-19 didn't happen, yeah, I'm just not really into shopping. So I only go shopping once in a blue moon, except for grocery shopping, of course. I'm not including grocery shopping in that, of course. I do go grocery shopping pretty often with my wife, right? You know, every Saturday or every Sunday, right? We go shopping. So yeah, there's that. Yeah, so that happens once in a blue moon. How about you guys? What do you guys only do once in a blue moon? These days, I feel like I only go out for a drink once in a blue moon, and I mean go out for an alcoholic drink. However, I have gone out once since my daughter was born in early June. I guess that's not too bad. That's like once in 6 weeks. No. Oh man, I'm really bad at that kind of stuff. No, once in 2 months. It's not too bad, right? Anyhow, let's take a look at these discussion questions, guys. It says, do you enjoy hearing stories? Well, of course. I think everybody enjoys hearing stories. Stories are interesting, they can inspire you, and they can be a lot of fun. So yes, I do enjoy hearing stories. However, I think I prefer to either, read stories in a book or to see them in a movie or TV show. Hearing stories from people, of course, sometimes it is interesting. Some people are really good at telling stories. Other people, not so much. And then other times I think, man, that guy is telling us a tall tale. I don't believe it. But yeah, I enjoy hearing stories. Did you enjoy them as a kid? Yes, of course. I used to read a lot when I was a kid, which was probably really good for me. I would read like every night for hours. So that's probably why I developed black circles under my eyes starting in like grade 3. And I never got rid of them, unfortunately. So don't read too much at night. What are some of your favorite childhood stories? Well, I actually read Lord of the Rings when I was in grade 3, I think. And obviously at the time, that was an extremely hard book to read. What were some of my favorite stories? Actually, I really liked a Japanese story called Momotaro, or Peach Boy. I really enjoyed that when I was a kid. I liked kind of classic American stories like Huckleberry Finn. I really enjoyed that. Also British ones as well, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or Charles Dickens stories. David Copperfield, I really liked that when I was a kid. Yeah, I like lots of different stories, but yeah, I like things like Lord of the Rings, David Copperfield, Huckleberry Finn, that kind of stuff. Those ones were really fun. Another series called The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I really enjoyed that when I was a kid. Yeah, and stuff like that. Okay, now, when hanging out with a group of people, do you prefer to be the one telling the stories, or do you prefer to just listen? Why do you feel that way? Oh, that's a hard question, actually. I don't know. I guess it depends. I think I prefer to listen to other people telling stories because my life right now is not like super exciting. Like I've got 2 kids and a wife. My life is pretty, quote unquote normal. Go to work, do some work, come home, sometimes do shopping, sometimes do laundry. After dinner, maybe sometimes I cook after dinner, do the dishes, throw out the garbage. My life is not, well, I'd say my life is a little bit mundane, which makes this sound sad, but I don't mean it really in a bad way. But mundane, interesting adjective. Mundane means kind of like plain and boring. So my life is a little bit mundane, but like that's really okay. It's okay to have a plain lifestyle, right? When you're in your 20s, you can go out, you can explore, you can do lots of crazy things, and that's great. You should have an adventure. But when you're in your 30s, you got to kind of calm down. And if you have a kid, you really need to calm down, take care of your kid. And it's good to have a kind of schedule with your kids. So yeah, my life is pretty mundane. So yeah, that's why I like listening to other people's stories, because maybe other people are not married and they have more exciting lives because they're not married. So I like to hear their stories, or if they don't have kids, maybe they're still traveling a lot, and it's interesting to hear about people traveling to different countries. Like before COVID-19 hit, my wife and I still traveled a fair amount using her travel benefit. But of course, we were mostly just using it to go back to my wife's home country to see my parents-in-law, right? So we weren't really like exploring the world anymore, unfortunately. The last major trip we made was right before my first daughter was born, and we went to Europe and we went to the Czech Republic, and it was really awesome. But anyhow, what is the most incredible thing that has ever happened to you? Are you willing to share the story with the class? Wow, that is a really tough question. If you guys have an incredible story, please tell me. Please write it down. I'd be so interested in hearing about it. For me, an incredible story. I really wish I had looked at this question before. I guess it depends on what kind of story, like an incredibly happy one, incredibly sad. Okay, I can tell you guys a story. This is not a little bit of a scary story. Maybe a good warning. So when I was younger, first I went to university up north. And it was in a city called Prince George. It's called UNBC, University of Northern British Columbia. And it's a smaller university, and it was okay, it was fun. But after studying there for, well, that was about 2 years, I got really bored, and I wanted to go abroad. And I was tired of living in Prince George. I was tired of UNBC. And I had a Korean friend at the time, and my Korean friend convinced me to go to Korea. So I went to Korea, and I had a really good time studying abroad. Anyhow, lots of stories in Korea, but I'm not going to tell you about a story from Korea. Anyhow, when I returned, I didn't have any money, and I decided I didn't want to return to university in the University of Northern British Columbia. I wanted to move to the big city, come down to Vancouver, because I had just lived in Seoul, South Korea, and it's such a huge, huge city, and I wanted to live in a larger city again. Maybe I got addicted to an urban lifestyle. Anyhow, at the time though, I needed to make money, and then I needed to move to Vancouver. So what I decided to do was to go to where my mother was living in northern Alberta, close to a city called Edmonton. But it was about an hour and a half away from Edmonton in a smaller city. And I thought I would go there, I'd find a job, I'd live at my mom's place, and I'd be able to make money and save money, and then I'll use that to come to Vancouver. So I did that, and I worked in this small community outside of Edmonton, and I got a job in the oil and gas industry because at the time in Alberta, the economy was booming, and anybody could get a job in the oil and gas industry, and you can make really good money. And I was making really good money even though I didn't have good skills. So I worked for about 8 months, saved a lot of money, which was great. And then I decided, okay, it's time to go back to it's time to go to Vancouver, and it's time to go finish university in Vancouver and go to SFU. But before I go there, I'm gonna go back to my hometown because I need to see my dad. So I decided to make a trip to my hometown. I decided not to take a flight. I wanted to save money, so I decided to take the bus from Edmonton to my hometown. And the total travel time was about 16 or 17 hours. And they told me I would get on the bus at about 10 p.m. at night, and at about 6 or 7 in the morning, I would get to Prince George. And then I'd have to get off the bus, wait for 1 hour, get on another bus, and that would take me to my hometown. So get on the bus, and it's already late, and I couldn't sleep, and there's a lot of crazy people on the bus. Like, if you ever use the bus service to go to a different city in Canada, it's not very good. Please take a plane if you can, or at least drive by yourself. Don't take a bus. It's just an awful experience, even though it's cheap. So yeah, I'm taking the bus. I can't sleep throughout the night. So I arrive in Prince George at like 7 or 8 or whatever it was, and I'm like really, really tired. But I get off, and then I'm waiting for this bus to take me to my hometown, right? And the lady that I had spoken to in Edmonton said I needed to wait 1 hour. So I wait an hour, and the bus it's not there. It doesn't show up. So I waited more than an hour, and then finally I go talk to somebody. I'm like, hey, where's the bus going to Terrace? And the person's like, oh, sorry, we don't have service today. There is no bus going to Terrace. And I was like, well, that's not fair. They told me in Edmonton that I would be able to get on a bus to go to my hometown. And he said, well, I'm sorry, you're just going to have to wait until tomorrow. And I said, like, well, are you going to give me like a hotel room or something? And the person's like, no, we're not. Because when you paid for your ticket, you agreed that if there were unexpected problems, it's not our fault. So, really disappointed, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I have to wait 24 hours to catch this next bus going to my hometown. Doesn't seem fair, right? This is garbage. So I was angry, right? And at the time, my dad was a little bit sick, but I thought, okay, I'm going to call my dad, and then I'm going to see if he can drive all the way to Prince George from my hometown, which is about 7 or 8 hours of driving, maybe a little bit more, it depends, and see if he can come pick me up. So I called him, and then he said, I can't do it, I'm sick, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, oh man, I am really stuck, right? Now, of course, I could have paid for a hotel room, I guess, but at the time, I was really focused on saving money. I was like, I am not wasting any money. So I decided to do something pretty stupid. I decided to hitchhike, and this is like maybe the international, like the thumbs up is the kind of the international sign for hitchhikers, right? I got lucky. I met this guy in Prince George. He drove me 2 towns towards my hometown, right? And then he dropped me off. I was waiting on the side of the highway, and I kept my finger out, or my thumb, and I kept trying to hitchhike, right? And I got lucky again. This younger guy about my age, he picked me up. He was on his way to his hometown, but unfortunately it was not Terrace. So he drove me about 2 more towns towards my hometown, and then we stopped in a community called New Hazelton. And New Hazelton was a First Nations community. Not that that's important, but anyhow, very small place. But he needed to drive off in a different direction. So he dropped me off. I said, thanks. That was great. And then I sat on the side of the highway, and it's, you know, it was getting dark. It was like around 6 or 7, and it was already getting dark. And I'm holding my thumb out, and nobody's picking me up. And then this guy is coming by on a bike, and he said, hey, buddy, where are you going? And I said, oh, I really want to go to my hometown. I need to go to Terrace. And he said, wow, hey, you're in luck. Actually, my friends and I, we're going to drive to Terrace tonight, right? Why don't you join us? And I was like, wow. And I was like, wow, this is great. He said, all right, come with me. Now, at the time, you have to remember, I didn't sleep all night. I was really, really exhausted. I wasn't thinking. There were no warning bells going off in my head. I'm like, okay, I'm going to follow this guy, and he's going to help me out, and I'm going to go to my hometown, right? So I follow this guy, and he's like, we're starting to go into, like, on this dirt road. And there are no more, I can't see any more houses. I can't see any buildings. Again, it's a small place. And we go up to this really disheveled looking house. This house in really poor condition. And he says, hey, wait here a moment. And there was a guy working on a car outside, and the 2 of them talked. And then the guy who had brought me there, he suddenly comes out and he gives something to the guy working on the car. And I was wondering, like, what is going on? Because I was told to wait here. And the guy working on the car is a huge, huge guy. And he comes up to me, and I put my hand out, like, to shake his hand. I was like, hi, my name's Allan. And he grabbed my hand, and then he put a knife up to my neck. And he said, give me everything you have, or I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to dump your body in the forest. Nobody will ever know you were murdered here, like, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I'm extremely frightened, so I give him everything. They take everything from me. My clothes, my bags, my watch, my MP3 player at the time, my cell phone, my money. Pretty much everything except my clothes that I had on me. So I guess I was lucky there. And this place, New Hazelton, they do not have a police station. The police do not go to this community. So thankfully, they just let me leave after they took my stuff. I went back to the highway. I was really depressed, obviously. And I just had to hitchhike again. And then eventually somebody did pick me up, and they were okay. And I got back to Terrace. And the person who had mugged me, they told me, you know, don't tell the police because I know your last name now. Your last name is Scaife. If you tell the police, I'm going to find out where your family members in Terrace live, and I will kill them, right? And I was like, Jesus. Anyhow, I thought that was probably, you know, he wasn't telling the truth. So I did contact the police, and I did tell them that I got mugged in New Hazelton, but they said there's nothing they could do. So That is one of the most incredible things that has happened to me, but that's a really negative story, right? But it's a true story, it's pretty awful. I think the moral behind this, there's no moral, but there is a good lesson behind this, is do not go hitchhiking. Hitchhiking, especially if you're a woman, is really dangerous. And Canada is a pretty safe country, but up north, not always so safe. So anyhow. All right, guys, what is the most difficult decision you've ever had to make? Well, I don't know. Oh, that's a really tough question. What is the most difficult decision? Like, I guess I could say, like, in university, like, choosing my major was a difficult decision, but that's not the most difficult decision. I think getting married to my wife, like, no. It wasn't a hard decision because I loved my wife and, you know, everything went well. But getting married is a big commitment, right? And, like, I got married at a relatively early age. I got married at 28. So my wife and I have been married for about 8 years now. And, well, about a little bit less, I guess. But yeah, we got married. And yeah, that was maybe the most difficult decision I ever had to make. All right, guys, but we are running out of time. I'm so sorry that we were not able to get this done. I guess we do have a few more minutes, or I think we're gonna stop the class. All right, guys, so we're about done for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the class. Now, tomorrow we're not actually going to be doing Wednesday's material. We're gonna be skipping Wednesday stuff, so we're gonna be doing Thursday's material tomorrow, and then Friday's material on Friday. I guess that just makes sense. And yeah, so that's what we'll do. You guys have a good day. I will see you tomorrow. Oh, and don't forget to do your writing assignment.
Yep.